Just below the ocean surface, more often than not, sharks tend to follow the rules of biology. They age, they grow, and then they slow down. But far below that surface, as you descend past the twilight zone, where sunlight disappears, the rules around maximum size are sometimes broken. Some deep-sea sharks don't just grow large, they grow enormous. These animals can live for centuries, reach sizes that to us seem impossible, and for some of these cases, scientists are still trying to figure out exactly how they do it, and importantly, why. So what is it about the deep ocean that sculpts giants? Well, in today's video, we're diving into the abyss to find out why the deepest, darkest, and most resource-poor environment on Earth produces some of its largest predators. Welcome back to another Shark Bytes episode, everyone. Now, to truly understand why some of these deep-sea sharks grow to insane sizes, we first need to understand about where they live, which is kind of tricky because this is a place that, for the most part, we humans can't really get to without incredibly high-tech equipment, and even then, things can go horribly wrong very quickly. This habitat is one of, if not the most extreme environment on Earth. Temperatures here are cripplingly cold, hovering just above freezing, somewhere between 1 to 4 degrees Celsius. The pressure down here is astronomical, often exceeding 300 times what we humans feel at the surface. And perhaps most importantly, food down here is incredibly scarce. So at first glance, this place might seem like the worst possible place for large animals to evolve, because normally when food is limited, animals often evolve to become smaller, more efficient, and faster at reproducing. And we do see this in the deep sea in some shark species, but sometimes we see the complete opposite. The phenomenon that I'm referring to here is, of course, deep sea gigantism, a pattern where some animals grow far larger than their shallow water relatives, although the exact reason behind this phenomenon is a little bit unclear. If we're looking across the animal kingdom, we tend to see the most extreme cases of deep sea gigantism in marine creatures like squids, most notably in the appropriately named colossal squid. But we also see it in crustaceans as well, like giant isopods, or famously in Japanese spider crabs. And even some jellyfish species show evidence that they can grow significantly larger down in the depths. All three of those animals I mentioned to you there have something in common though, and that is they're all invertebrates. They don't have a backbone, or any bones for that matter, which might lead you into thinking that only invertebrates are capable of deep sea gigantism, but we know that isn't the case. Some shark species undoubtedly display evidence that they too can be susceptible to this rule, and we know that they're not invertebrates. Shark skeletons aren't made of bone. Their skeleton is cartilaginous, meaning it's much more flexible and lightweight than a traditional bony skeleton. And it's this cartilaginous structure that actually enables them to grow larger rather than preventing it. The cartilage is a pliable tissue that can expand, remodel, and grow throughout the animal's life without having to deal with the normal constraints of a bony, mineralized rigid structure. Now, even though this cartilage structure ends up facilitating large growth in some of these deep sea sharks, it's not the fundamental principle that causes it, because all sharks have cartilaginous skeletons. The reef sharks, the pelagic sharks, the deep sea sharks. So to find out the true mechanisms of this phenomenon, we're going to have to look at some ecological theories and some case studies of giant underwater shark species. Before we have a look at some of those case studies though, there's a really important concept that we've got to wrap our heads around first, and that is the pace of life syndrome theory. This concept is probably one of the most important ideas in biology, and in simple terms, it suggests that all animals fall onto a fast to slow continuum or spectrum. Animals that live their lives at a faster pace, so your bolder individuals with higher metabolisms, tend to grow quickly, reproduce earlier, and die younger. Whereas the animals that live life slower tend to grow more slowly, reproduce later, and live to much older ages. And while still context dependent, this fast-slow continuum is observed across the animal kingdom, from birds to reptiles to fish, and a few deep sea shark species most definitely sit at the absolute extreme of the slow life end of that spectrum, with one of the most famous examples being a shark species that many of you out there will know and love. The Greenland shark is perhaps one of the strangest animals on Earth. Living in the icy depths of the Arctic and North Atlantic, down the years this shark has regularly shattered our expectations of what a vertebrate can be. They can grow over 6 meters long, with some reports suggesting that they can surpass 7 meters or more. To put that into perspective for you, these sharks regularly compete with and even exceed the maximum lengths of great white sharks, which really does give you an idea of how big these animals can get. But most astonishingly, a few years ago, scientists were able to reveal that many of these Greenland sharks can reach ages of over 400 years old, making them the longest known living vertebrate ever discovered. But a really important detail about these massive ancient sharks is the rate of their growth. Greenland sharks grow at an unbelievably slow rate. Scientists working on them think it's around a centimetre per year. So you've potentially got Greenland sharks out there right now that are older than entire civilizations. Female individuals of this species don't even reach sexual maturity until they're 150 years old, which again is another confirmation there for us that these sharks are on that extreme end of that fast-slow continuum. So instead of growing really quickly and then just stopping like most other animals, the Greenland shark just keeps on going, and it's the deep sea environment that's enabling it. The cold temperatures in the deep sea are often hovering around 0 degrees Celsius, so these frigid waters drastically slow down normal biological processes like metabolism, which means that with slower cellular activity, those cells don't end up getting damaged as much over time, effectively slowing the process of aging. Recent genome studies have also shown that these sharks may even have genes that enhance DNA repair and boost their immune systems. Pair this with their incredibly slow speed, often less than 2 miles per hour, and you've got a very simple but effective strategy. Live slowly, grow slowly, but live long enough and you become enormous. Now, the Greenland shark isn't just an isolated case here, and they might actually be part of a wider biological process that scientists have been studying for the last 150 years. We have spoken about it briefly before on the channel, but it's something called Bergmann's rule. The idea here is that animals living in colder environments tend to grow larger than their relatives in warmer regions. Bigger animals generally conform to the rule a bit better than smaller animals, but the reason for it comes down to something quite simple. Larger bodies have a lower surface area to volume ratio, meaning they lose their heat more slowly, which in freezing cold environments is a massive advantage. And so it means that over time, evolution might end up favouring bigger bodies because they hold on to that heat more efficiently. Interestingly here, Bergmann's rule was originally developed for warm-blooded animals like mammals and birds, but there is some evidence now that it can be applied to sharks too. Research on prehistoric megalodons has shown evidence that individuals at higher latitudes grew to bigger sizes than those in more tropical regions. And there's clearly some evidence of it here within a few deep-sea shark species as well. Of course, you can't broadly apply the rule to all sharks, and there's likely some other factors involved as well, but there are some select cases where it is applicable. If we move away from the Arctic, though, into the more offshore deep ocean, we come across maybe an even stranger deep-sea shark species. For those of you with thalassophobia, the Goblin Shark on the face of it is like something out of a nightmare. With its elongated snout that looks like a nose and hideous protruding and extendable jaws, this species is regularly referred to as a living fossil. They're the only surviving member of the Mitsucarinidae family, a lineage that has existed for over 125 million years, and evolutionarily, it's changed very little in that time. But beyond its freakish appearance, goblin sharks tell us something important about deep-sea growth. Unlike the fast and aggressive shark species near the surface, goblin sharks rely on slow movements, ambush predation, and some seriously impressive sensory detection. In the pitch-black darkness of the deep ocean, chasing prey aimlessly would be inefficient, so instead goblin sharks conserve their energy and strike suddenly with their slingshot jaw. And that energy-saving strategy is fundamental for these sharks, because in environments like the deep sea, where available energy is limited, animals that burn less energy can survive longer. And again, this longer life often leads to a larger size. I think sometimes people might forget just how big goblin sharks can supposedly get to. Because normally when you're watching footage of these sharks in action, there's nothing within the frame to give you a perspective of their size. Generally, adult goblin sharks average around 4 meters, but there are some estimated records out there that put these sharks upwards of 5 or 6 meters. That's 16 to 20 feet long. But Greenland sharks and goblin sharks aren't alone here. Several other deep-sea species follow similar patterns. Closely related to Greenland sharks, the sleeper shark lives in cold, dark waters, often reaching sizes of over 6 meters long. Megamouth sharks are another deep-sea giant who are rarely seen and only feed on plankton, and despite this, they still reach massive sizes of over 5 meters long because they live slowly and efficiently. One of the deepest living large predatory sharks, though, is the six-gill shark. Found at depths of over 2,000 meters, again, these sharks can reach enormous sizes of 6 meters long. It's been speculated that their additional gill slits, in comparison to most other sharks who only have 5, might even enhance their ability to extract oxygen at greater rates within these low oxygen environments. But again, we're seeing this pattern here of deep habitat, slow life, and larger sizes. But I think what we're seeing here across a few of these deep sea species is that there isn't just one reason why these sharks grow huge. It's a combination of factors, including colder temperatures, low predation pressure, energy efficiency, efficiency, and perhaps even genetics too. Now, I do think it's important to point out here that this go deeper, get bigger concept doesn't apply to all sharks, because there are many shark species down there that grow surprisingly small, some no longer than the length of your arm. And the reason for that comes down to something fundamental within evolution, and that is there's never just one way to survive. So while some of these sharks evolve to grow slowly and live for centuries, others take a completely different approach and end up being smaller and faster. Because being a large shark comes with a cost. There's a trade-off here. Even a big, slow-moving body still requires more energy to maintain itself than a smaller one does. And down in that deep-sea desert, if food becomes scarce for too long, bigger sharks are more vulnerable to starvation, whereas those smaller individuals don't require as much food to sustain themselves. On top of this, different shark species are often separated into different ecological niches, so they're not all competing against each other for the same food resource. Some of them specialize on tiny prey species, some of them scavenge on fallen carcasses, and some move to different sections of the water column during the day to hunt. And this ecological niche separation means that you end up with sharks that have evolved in different ways to survive. Both strategies can be successful, and both of them are shaped by that harsh environment, but they've solved that problem in completely different ways, which I think is what makes the deep ocean so mysterious and strange, but also at the same time so interesting, because it begs the question, what else is down there, growing, waiting, and as of currently, is completely unknown to humans? And that is an unsettling thought. Anyway guys, if you enjoyed this video, then apparently the algorithm thinks you might quite enjoy this one. I'm doing some tests at the moment, but supposedly YouTube thinks that if you enjoyed today's deep sea sharks video, then you'll enjoy the one that we made here. I've got no idea what it is, but make sure you give it a click and see if they've got it right.